Hello everyone. I am Hitesh, and this is the first episode of HC Talks Season 3. Firstly, I am very excited to have Kunal Oak, the Indian Big Cube Beast, with 22 national records in the time we are recording the video, and also he's a three-time national champion and also the current national champion for 6x6 and 7x7. So, welcome Kunal Bhaiya. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Hitesh. I'm doing good. Yeah,
So, if you remember, we had you in HC Talks Season 1 as our
yeah,
guest.
that was a nice experience. Yeah,
Correct. And after near about 3 years, more than 3 years, we are having this, 2021 August, more or less, we are having this interview. So it's very exciting to start this season with you. So people mostly know you, but just giving a bit more brief, Kunal Oak is basically the Big Cube champ of India. He has been into the Big Cube range more or less since 2018, 2019, focusfully. He is the current national champion for 6x6 and 7x7 and holds at least one national record from 5x5 to 7x7 as of now and has broken 22 national records. And he recently participated in the Asian Championship, which was held in Malaysia, and he broke two national records there as well. So, first of all, just talking about the Asian Championship, how do you feel like, as people might know, that India was out of the top 100 list for 6x6 mean. Single was there
yeah.
since last 3 months, but the mean was out of top 100 since a long time. So how it felt to bring back the mean to top 100?
I mean, for me, I was less concerned about getting the mean back in top 100. What I knew is looking at the psych sheet, I believe I was out of the top 30 and top 20 were
Correct.
making finals. So my goal was more so to just break NR mean by a big margin because that's the only way I could have made finals.
Yes. And
So,
as we saw,
and
yeah, correct. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just saying this is the first time I've actually been able to clutch a pretty decent third solve on a 6x6 mean, and I'm quite happy with that. Yeah.
Correct. And as people would have seen that, as he told that he needed an NR mean with a good margin to qualify for the finals, and that was the actual scenario. The 20th place was sub Indian NR mean who qualified for the finals, and the 21st was above NR mean as far as I remember. So it was good that Kunal Bhaiya was able to reach the 6x6 finals in a big platform like Asian Championships. Now, as people might have seen the first season where he has talked about a lot of things that we discussed, but as it's a new episode, we might just start with some similar questions so that new audience will get a brief about his career as well. So the basic question, as you also know, that how did you start queuing?
Yeah, so I have a very definitive story about that. I used to initially commute to school by bus, then later on, I used to go by car. So when I used to go by bus, there was a senior at my bus stop. I was quite close with him since I had gotten to, the senior school. And essentially, one day I just saw him toying around with the Rubik's Cube, and I thought he was just mindlessly playing around with it. But he actually solved it, not just once, but several times. It was a long school bus ride from my home to the school. It was, I think, half an hour, 40 minutes at least. Right. So he solved the cube several times. So that's when I asked him that, is there actually a trick to it, a method to it, which is the typical non-cuber question you ask,
Correct,
right?
correct,
What's the trick to solving it? And then he informed me that there was actually a very structured method, the layer by layer method, or as
correct,
we commonly call it, the beginner's method.
correct.
I think that very same evening I went home and I learned how to solve the cube. And the thing is, as a result, from day one of my cubing journey, I've had that exposure to speed cubing. Every day I would race the senior on the bus. Right. And that eventually got me more into speed cubing culture. And then in terms of how I got into competitive speed cubing, my WCA profile reflects that I started competing in 2015, but I actually attended a non-WCA competition back in 2013. It was in my city. And there were a few big names there. The main one that I remember is Akash Rupela. He
Correct.
won that competition by a big margin, and he solved it in roughly half the time it took me. I think he got something like a 13 to 14 second solve, and my best solve was a 27. Right. So that was again inspiring to me because at that time, of course, I knew about some of the big names like Felix Zemdegs and Mats Bock at the time. But I was not aware that this culture was so widespread that it was there in my city.
Correct.
Right. I mean, there are many such activities where you see the best of the best and you think, okay, it's like a very niche thing to get good at this. And then when you see it actually happening in front of your eyes, it gives you a sense that, okay, there is actually a fair bit of growth in this sport, and it's actually something that happens in my city. So I got exposure to that competitive speed cubing element pretty much the year I started cubing, which is quite nice.
Correct. So yeah, like for people who are thinking that 13, 14 seconds now it's nothing, but that time back, like or more than 10 years back, around 11 years ago, 13, 14 seconds was a huge achievement because that time the cubes were less better. Like the cubes nowadays, the hardware has improved a lot in the last, even I would say not even 10 years, even in the last 3 years, since I have been cubing, the hardware has improved like this. So you can just imagine when non-magnetic cubes were mostly used, and I guess the that time magnetic cubes were not that much popular or were not available maybe.
Uh, no, I think magnetic cubes came around closer to 2016 to 2017. Right, and this was the era where pretty much the most popular cube was the Diane Zanchi. I mean, most
Correct,
people know the modern version of the Zanchi, but the Zanchi actually has a very interesting legacy surrounding it. And I think even more so than the hardware, because there were people getting times close to our current national record on that
correct,
obsolete hardware. I think it was the intellectual aspect of it. We did not really have many resources. We had to improve on a more observational basis. So improvement was a little bit slow. There was a lot more trial and error.
correct. So now moving ahead with the same career related question in cubing. So as you started cubing and it's more or less more than 11, 12 years since you are cubing, and now you have developed a lot. But as we say, sky is the limit. So, what are your
Yeah.
plans for the upcoming endeavors in cubing for you?
For me, I primarily plan to switch my focus on coaching now. Quite a few of India's top cubers are currently being coached by me because, as much as I would like to think I've helped India progress in big cubes, I think we're still not quite there in terms of being competitively relevant at major championships. For instance, the
Agreed.
latest Asian Championships, I think it had some of the best big cube podiums we've ever seen.
Yes,
No one from India really had a chance at getting a big cube podium, and I hope to change that very soon. But
correct,
I'm kind of past the age where I think I can make such a big leap and bound in my global average. So my focus is more towards coaching others now.
correct. So, as you guys saw, that it's not only about his personal benefit, but he is more happy towards his students getting success. That's what a true teacher is. And for people who are not much aware, I am also being coached by Kunal Bhaiya, and whoever knows that I hold the current 6x6 NR single until it breaks before you see this video. Uh, so he helped
Yeah.
me a lot, and the motivation and the help that he has given me. And touch wood, I am still thankful to him till date. And I feel very proud to mention that it was not only my self effort, but also his coaching being a very relevant and important part of it. So that is a very good future goal, participating as well as mainly focusing on coaching. So related to coaching, as we have some insiders about your new company coming up, we won't reveal much of a thing, but do you want to tell
Hmm.
anything about it so that people get to know about and get excited?
Without divulging too many details, what I would say is that everyone has the right to be excited about this, and I do plan to revolutionize cubing and speed cubing, not just in India, but in other parts of the world as well.
Correct. So that is good because as you told that the big cube range especially 3 by 3 people are growing and 3 by 3 has been a very popular event since the start as is the original Rubik's cube. But making the like talking about the big cubes, the big cube India, like as we can see, like the 4x4, India has a very good ranking in 4x4 in the world right now. Not top 10 maybe, but compared to the other big cubes, 5x5, 6x6, 7x7, 4x4 is the best ranking that India has in terms of those cubes. And 6x6, I guess it's the worst. Correct. So that is the point
I believe
that,
so, yes.
yeah, because 7x7 is pretty good.
Maybe
And
maybe 5 by 5 would be worse, at least the average. Maybe.
5x5 would be the worst. Maybe.
The
I guess
average,
that
yes,
sits
the
with,
single, no.
yeah. So that is the point that big Qs need to improve. And at least, like, we are still happy that you reached the Asian 6x6 finals and 7x7 finals. People who don't know, he missed it only by one spot. And that was sad even after the NR single, but that's still pushing ahead for further achievements. So that's good,
Yeah.
and we surely hope that if not you, any of your students will achieve the mark or at least reach at a level where they can have a chance or they podium in the upcoming championships that we have. So for sure, it will be a great thing to see your students succeed. Now, coming on to some more of a fun questions that our audience gave us. So the first question is not much of a fun, but this is a actual good question. That how does Kunal Bhaiya practice for big kills? Because people have two concepts. Either they related to 3x3, that you need to learn a lot of new things, or they only think that grinding is the main way of improvement.
Hmm.
So what do you think?
Yeah. So, I mean, my practice philosophy has changed a fair bit. Um, like I picked up big cues when I was around your age, Hitesh. And that time it was primarily grinding because when you're averaging 10 minutes on a bad 7 by 7 cube, the only thing you can really do is get better at turning.
Correct.
It's only maybe a couple years ago that I started to shift my focus more towards efficiency because beyond a certain point, your TPS gets a little bit capped, right? I'm currently
Correct.
limited by my turning speed, I would say, right? So that's where, given the resources that we have right now, we've got first off YouTube, where now thankfully a lot of the top solvers actually actively upload their solves, and I
Correct.
enjoy studying them, breaking them down, and trying to find the difference between their solves and my solves. And then, of course, you've got websites like Recons, where you can actually get reconstructions of certain top 6 by 6 solves. So those have helped me a lot. Um, I think you know this, but others may not. Up until Asian Championships from maybe 3, 4 months back, my focus has been exclusively on 6 by 6. Other
Correct.
than that, the past couple of years, I've actually taken cubing pretty lightly. But the past three,
Correct.
4 months, I grinded 6 by 6 fairly hard because the NR main was unbroken for over a year, as you may know. And thankfully, my results reflect that. There were a couple of unexpected NRs, like the 7 by 7 NR single sprinkled in as
Correct.
well. But my focus is more towards certain fundamentals. So I use the Yao method for 5 by 5, 6 by 6, and 7 by 7. So I keep certain fundamentals in mind, and they do transfer across events. Of course, there is some event specific stuff that I also do, like on 6 by 6. The majority of my time has been spent changing how I do my last four edges
Correct.
between my previous NR mean of 132 and my current one of 129. So for me right now, it's more about finding weaknesses in my solves and targeting them to eliminate them. But for people starting out, it's definitely just a matter of grinding as much as you can on all three cubes at the same time. One more thing is I picked up 5 by 5 and 6 by 6 relatively recently. I mean, again, when I was around your age, my focus was only on 7 by 7 to the point where my 7 by 7 mean was like 2.5 minutes and my 6 by 6 mean was 2 minutes, right?
Yes.
So I don't necessarily recommend that. I do recommend picking up 5, 6, 7 concurrently and practicing all of them and seeing which one you find the most interesting in the long run. For instance, I was doing 6 by 6 because I felt like it was my best shot at finals, but it's not necessarily something I enjoyed, which is why
Correct.
now after Asians, I'm feeling a little bit burnt out from big cubes.
Yes.
Right. So I
So,
recommend trying out these events and
yeah,
seeing which ones you enjoy. Yeah.
correct. So, yeah, it's like I feel some people have this wrong concept, including I had it, but more or less I have recovered for it. That if you are trying to be a big cube solver, that's good, but you don't necessarily need to do all the things just to have a status that you are a big cube solver. Like most the best example is I enjoy doing 6 by 6 the most. Then I enjoy 5 by 5, 4 by 4s. 4 by 4 we don't consider as big cubes, very honestly. But let's include it. Many people think that you need to be very good at 7 by 7 because you are good or decent at 5 and 6. That's I feel that it's not necessary to be doing every event, even if you don't like it, because it's again coming upon, as you told, the interest that you have. You do it, you realize that are you enjoying it or not. It might happen that someone doesn't enjoy 6 by 6 at all. Like you also don't enjoy it much because you enjoy more or less 7 by 7 and you are mostly focusing on 3 by 3 these days. But if I enjoy 6 by 6, I should stick to it because that is something that pushes me to cube rather than I'm not enjoying and just to do it for the sake of doing it, it doesn't motivate you further. Correct.
Yeah.
So, yeah, moving on to the next question. We have a question which says, do you think the ZB method is the future of 3 by 3?
That is a bit of a tricky question. I mean, when you say the future, to me, that doesn't just mean that the world record average should be set with ZB. It indicates that the majority of top solvers should be using ZB. As of right
Correct.
now, even though our world record average or single, even though neither of them are on ZB, I do believe that ZB is the future. Because for me, my philosophy with 3 by 3 is kind of reducing the amount of discrete steps that you have. Right? If we
Correct.
look at how cubing progresses from a beginner method to a more intermediate method, we're essentially fusing steps to try and reduce them. I think eventually the meta for 3 by 3 is going to be three look solves. You inspect your first three pairs, you do ZBLS, and you do ZBLL. This will require a ridiculous amount of grinding. It's not something that I will be able to incorporate, I think. But it's also something which we have seen at least two top solvers incorporate, Joanie and Timon. They've done so
Correct.
to a very high degree of success, not just in terms of their PRs. Okay, Timon's PR is still with CPOP, but also in terms of their top championship performances. They are
Correct.
quite consistent now.
Correct. So, yeah, now we have another question. This is a subjective question, but you might give some light on this. How to reach sub 10 in 3 by 3? This is a question I believe you might listen a lot.
Yes. Uh, I had a video in the works for about a year, and the reason I haven't published it yet is because I keep updating my opinions on this.
Correct.
Right. So without sounding too absolutist, what I would say is that your turning and finger tricks always need to be on point for any barrier. Turning is the backbone of any speed solve. Without good turning, you can't get fast. And then the second thing that some people find missing for inspection and something that even I'm lacking in to date is inspection. I think really the thing that will help people get from like a 10-ish average to a sub 10 average is at least learning to plan their first pair. And the thing is, the last thing is just stop thinking of sub 10 as a barrier. My
Correct.
philosophy is that barriers are kind of arbitrary. The reason people give so much weight to sub 10 is because now you're going from a double digit timing to a single digit timing. It's also the same reason barriers like sub 1, 2, 3 are the most common barriers that people want to
Big cubes.
cross on 5 by 6 by 6 and 7 by 7. Yeah,
Correct.
right. It's like you're crossing that minute mark. That sub 10 on 3 by 3 is sort of the equivalent of that. There is no
Correct.
reason why we should be giving sub 10 more importance as compared to sub 9.5 or sub 10.5. They're all
Correct.
equal in my eyes, right? So I would say focus on the quality of your solves, focus on eliminating the weaknesses in your specific solves, and your times have to improve. There's no other choice, right?
Correct. So, moving on to the next question. This is a question which most of the people would be facing with, and I would also be a part of the answer, like in terms of listening. And it's how to control nerves. And I would specify considering competition nerves in this regard.
I have a lot to say about this because until very recently, my nerve management has also been terrible. Like over the past year, I have not performed well in 3 by 3 in particular, which is the event I used to practice seriously. But I recently overcame that and I got three consecutive sub 8 averages. So I'll talk on that a little bit. The first thing that's going to matter is being completely comfortable in your solving methodology. The reason I messed up quite a bit in comp is because I was trying too many new things all at the same time. At sometimes I was trying yellow cross, which I'm not comfortable with. I was trying to incorporate more lefty moves deliberately, even though it's something I have not practiced too much at home. You've seen my latest comp finals average where I had like a 1 second pause for ZBLS,
Correct.
right? I think that if you are incorporating new things into your solves, you should take an off season to do these. And at that time, you should not worry about your competition results. But if there is a competition you care about, like a championship, you should make sure that you're only doing things that you're already comfortable with. Comfort with your solving methodology is going to matter the most. Second thing that I've changed is hardware. I used to use very fast, very loose cubes, uh, kind of for the past year or so, I would say. But prior to that, I actually used to use fairly slow and gummy cubes. At my latest competition, I tried a gummy cube again, and it actually worked really well for me. It inspired more turning confidence, right? Make sure your hardware suits your competition turning style. My competition, not my competition turning style, but my home turning style is fairly light, but I can turn aggressively if the cube is slow. But in competitions, my turning is quite consistently aggressive for 3 by 3, right? For big cubes, it's more of a matter of managing your energy. As I
Correct.
mentioned, usually what happens with me is my first two solves on, for example, a 6 by 6 mean, they are on record pace, and then I mess up the third solve. It's usually because I get exhausted by the third solve because I'm focusing way too hard on my first two solves, right?
Correct.
That energy management is going to be important. Again, hardware is going to matter a lot. Have switched my Mm, I've switched all three mains, 5, 6, 7, and I'm very comfortable with my new hardware now. Right. And finally, just trying to mentally push aside any bad part of the solve. One bad
Correct.
habit I have is that if, for example, on 6 by 6 or 7 by 7, if my first two centers go poorly, uh, I pretty much end up bombing the whole solve. That's something I've had to change. That, just brush it off, focus on the rest of the solve. It can still be good. I don't know if you know, but my former 5x5 NR single of 44, it was India's first sub 45. My cross plus centers was around 25 to 26. That is kind of on pace for a 51, 52
50.
second solve,
Correct.
right? Because my look ahead during that step was abysmal. I brushed it off. I got a good second half. I got pretty good flow, and that's why I got TNR single, right? And this is something you'll see with a lot of people. The first half seemingly does not go that well, but they're able to compensate for it in the second half just because they focused.
Correct. So as he told that you, especially in big queues, 3 by 3, he gave a lot of examples. And just for people being curious, what cube did you use in your last Aero City comp?
So, yes, I'm currently using the X-Men Design Tornado version 4 flagship as my main cube.
Correct.
Prior to that, I was using the GAN 12, which has not worked well for me in comp, even though it still gives me the best times at home. And prior to that, I was using primarily the RS3M version 5, but that cube was just a little bit too sturdy for me. It's like I wasn't able to push my turning in comps. I could safety a high 7 average, but nothing beyond that.
Correct. So as we mentioned that your hardware, maybe it's the best. Like this is something that I have realized being a cube store owner as well, that people push on be like getting cubes which fast people use. That's fine. It might be that the cube is very good, but it is not necessary that if XYZ world record holder uses that cube, that will 100% suit you. The best way I
Yeah,
feel is if especially you cannot spend too much on the cubes and you want to be like you get it once and you use it for a good amount of time until it is ripped off. So I feel that the best way is to try it out by someone else who has it in a competition or whom you know, or try to get something very sure of, see more reviews, what people are comparing that cube to. These all things when you see, then you can finalize the cube better rather than just getting whatever world record holder uses and then just thinking that this is the very bad cube. Correct.
yeah.
So
And
as he
just
was
to touch
telling
on
about, yeah,
that a little bit more, Yeah,
Hmm.
just to touch on that a little bit more. Um, I do definitely agree with that. I think people should get a cube that suits them. Right. Reviews are a little bit difficult in the sense that you still don't know if the cube will suit you. You just know what the
Right.
reviewer is telling you. So I would encourage people to go and try cubes. Like at this latest competition, I had all the most recent flagships, and I will be releasing a comparison video soon as well
Correct.
because I want to give people the opportunity to try cubes and make a more educated guess as to which cube is probably going to end up working for them. I mean,
Correct.
the Tornado version 4 is not a cube I ever considered. It's thanks to your recommendation that I actually ended up getting one, and it's working
Yeah.
out well for me. I don't see myself switching away from this in the foreseeable future.
Correct. So as you also told about the big cube nerves, this is something that Kunal Bhaiya knows that I have faced it. The first two solves in Telangana Championship round one, and that time the NR was 1 minute 33.66, as far as I remember.
Yes.
And that was NR that was unbroken for a good amount of time compared to the single. So I was on pace. I got a 131, I got a 130. I had 5 seconds of advantage in hand. Just that I didn't calculate and I thought too much about the solve, not focusing, but thinking too much about the solve, which made me bombed up the solve and I got a 143 or 144, something like that. Whereas I only needed a 139, which was pretty much a good safety attempt for me. So this is what I mean that the big cube and 3 by 3 mindset for handling nerves is completely different. Considering the time that you have to think, because 3 by 3 you cannot think much. In 10 seconds, 12 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, how much will you think? Correct. But in big cubes, you need to think on the solve and focus on the solve instead of just thinking that what can happen and what you can do. Because it's just in the moment and you just need to maintain the flow in big cubes, as far as I can say by my experience. Correct. So I would ask a question from my end that when you went to the Asian Championship, I was it your first uh, international competition?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So as it was a big championship, and this might be a little bit not too much relevant with the question, but yeah, how did you feel about it, considering a Indian competition and international competition? What were the differences, the major differences that you saw? I know it was a championship, but still the major ones.
I mean, outside of being a championship, it felt like a fairly normal competition to me. Right? I
Okay.
don't think that there was anything above and beyond something that's there at more of a regional championship. Right. Apart from having their own merchandise, etc., having their goodies, I mean, in terms of how the competition was run, it was not that different, I would say, to competitions I've been to. Really, what changed the atmosphere for me was the Cubas that were present.
Correct.
Right. I met a lot of people that I look up to, and I met a lot of friends for the first time that I usually only talk to online. Outside
Correct.
of that, I mean, just the region where the comp was, which was the IOI uh, city mall area, it's very similar to the malls that we have here in Delhi. So the competition environment, thankfully, was not very alien to me,
Correct.
right? And I think that's one of the things that allowed me to compete fairly well in the first rounds of 6x6 and 7x7.
Correct. So it's good actually that you get a homely environment at the international competition as well, because that helps you control nerves, especially in that
Yeah.
high level of a competition. So the next question as we come up is, do you think like few people are getting cubing as their career, not maybe full time, but at least for a certain amount of time, which is getting them pay a good amount, or at least working as a coach, or maybe working as, yeah, kind of the most over the coach part. The cube store is a little bit very niche to certain people. So do you think that cubing can grow up as a career, not only in terms of coaching, but anything else?
I mean, of course, for coaching, the answer is yes. In terms of competitive speed cubing, with the current state of the speed cubing scenario, I would say it's very difficult. I can't think of too many people who are full-time competitive speed cubers because cubing competitions are not at the scale where they actually provide a good amount of prize money right now. I mean, you can't just do two large championships a year and expect to live off that. To my understanding, a lot of these cubers get paid a certain amount by their sponsors. And this is something that's not unique to cubing. In various disciplines and sports, the majority of the income doesn't actually come from winning events. That's just where they get their reputation from. The majority of the income comes from sponsors.
Correct.
So, for instance, when you look at competitions like the GAN SSL League, I look at that and I really do think that that can be the future of competitive speed cubing. And an event of that scale can actually, draw in more people and actually get more people to compete as professionals. I think it could help expand professional speed cubing even further.
Got it. So, one more question that I have related to the cubes and hardware part. For a person who is very vague to or very new to the hardware scenario or very new to cubing, maybe, how can he or she choose a better cube? Or like one thing is testing out cubes and just giving a brief that as the market is cluttered with so many new releases and every releases has its infinite amount of options. So what do you think can be a good piece of advice? Because see, I have seen a lot of my students as well whom I teach and who are new beginners getting a GAN cube just because it's the most expensive one. And normally people who are not aware of the cubes much talk about that GAN is the best. I can agree that it's good, but maybe not the best for each and every person, especially for the price to performance ratio. So what is your take on this?
So if you're like me and you only care about how you do well at comms, price to performance ratio actually becomes irrelevant because you just want the best cube for yourself, right?
Correct.
The GAN cubes technically do have a poor price to performance ratio, but that doesn't mean that the performance is not good.
Correct.
However, you are asking specifically about beginners.
Yeah.
I have seen on an observational basis that to get good at speed cubing, you require accurate turning. And when you get a cube like a GAN cube, or even some other recent releases that have certain auto align technology, when you're just starting out cubing, that auto align is extremely forgiving towards inaccurate turning. It becomes less and less effective the faster you get and the faster you turn. So if you
Correct.
use such forgiving cubes very early on in your solving life, it could inculcate certain bad turning habits that will be difficult to get rid of later on. A lot of people say that they like my turning and how accurate it is. That's because I spent the majority of my cubing life on fairly unforgiving cubes. While I
Correct.
don't recommend going out of your way and getting an absolutely terrible cube, I do think that there are some very good entry level speed cubes on the market, which are still magnetic. I do recommend using magnetic cubes, but not cubes that have, 30 degrees of auto align and,
Correct.
there it's like more of the cube doing the turning as opposed to you, because that's something that's going to hurt a lot more when you're faster.
Correct. So that is the point that a lot of people just think that the more features the cube has, the better it is for them. That's true, but not up till a certain mark considering your improvement. Because for me also, just sharing a little bit from our NR grind that I did. So that time I am and I used to main the Aushi WRM. I'm actually maining it since 2022 when it was actually released. I have switched a lot of modifications, but the base cube is the same. But in between, I had a little bit of inaccurate turning for certain steps. So Kunal Bhaiya itself suggested me to use the Melong V2 6 by 6, which is fairly, I would say, like literally one third of the price, near about one third of the Aushi WRM. But it's very similar to it, firstly, and secondly, it's less forgiving than the Aushi WRM because Aushi is much more a flexible cube and Melong is kind of the cube you will require a good turning at, and if you use and basically if you do good turning you will be rewarded as well, and that actually worked well. And I feel that many of the speed cubers now also use the Melong V2 7 by 7 over the output, even the movie sponsors, because they feel that it is better. So this is something that has been a wrong concept that people have. The higher the price is, the better it is. That might be true up till a certain level, but not necessarily suiting you well and benefiting you the most. Correct. So yeah, this was up for this question. Now moving on to a next question, I would ask that how can people stay motivated in Cuba? Because see, there are a very handful bunch of cubers in India who participate in competitions, especially I would say regionally. And every region has a specific number of people or specific handful of people who come to competitions and win most of the prizes. So the other audience, suppose there's 100 people come and even 10 events are there, 30 prizes. 30 prizes are not for 30 different peoples. It's always more or less maximum 15 people or 20 people winning all those 30 prizes. How can the other half of the people who don't win anything stay motivated? Because as per the World Cuba Association statistics, many of the newcomers who participate in a competition one time, they don't return back because they don't get anything. So what do you think can be a solution to this?
That's a good question. I think first and foremost, most first timers are not going to win anything at their first competition. The way I see it is the ones who are truly passionate about cubing will not let this bother them and they'll continue cubing. Right. I also did not win anything at my first competition. Granted, it was a side events competition, but I think that there are definitely going to be some people who are more driven and more motivated than others. If you want to motivate more people, I think the best way to do that is to have certain miscellaneous prizes like we do in Delhi competitions. We've got prizes for the youngest cuber, the fastest female cuber, and the fastest debutant,
Correct.
right? I think that's one good thing that can be done. The second thing is online competitions. For example, the one that you are organizing, it has age categories. That's also
Correct.
something that can help people, right? And finally, it's just something, it boils down to finding an event that you enjoy. I think the majority of people start out grinding exclusively 3x3, not knowing that there are other events or not knowing how enjoyable these other events can be,
Correct.
right? I think people force themselves to do 3x3, considering it's the most mainstream, it's the most popular, it's the most reputable event. But that's also why they might eventually lose interest because maybe they just don't enjoy the event. Maybe they were cut out to main an event like Clock or Cube or Megaminx or blindfolded solving. Maybe they just don't enjoy 3x3, and there's nothing wrong with that, I think. It's just that they haven't explored enough to find the event that they enjoy. And ultimately, if someone has tried all the events, they've competed a bunch, and they still don't have the motivation, the sad truth is maybe they just don't enjoy cubing. And that's also completely normal. I used to do several different hobbies, and I left all of them within like 6 months. I'm talking about when I was maybe 10, 11 years old.
Correct.
Cubing stuck with me because it was interesting to me. There are people who quit cubing after 6 months because it's simply not interesting for them. I don't think cubing is something that should be forced. That motivation should be intrinsic. And if it's not, don't force it. No harm
Correct.
there.
So yeah, that is the point. Like we have a total of 17 official events, and like 17 official events, but I would say technically just let's focus on the 13 more accessible events. The four events that I'm leaving are FMC, four blind, five blind, and MBLD. Because FMC is something that you cannot do the whole day until you are like people do FMC. It's not like people don't do FMC at all. But just talking about a beginner perspective, people would prefer doing a timed event rather than doing an event which requires more of your brain. Because FMC is something that most of the people don't even know about that this type of event exists. And the blind events basically need three blind as a base requirement. So you have 13 different options to choose from. So it's like something that I did. I started with 3x3, obviously. I did more number of events, I did more stuff. And with time, I did like, I learned all the 12 events. I didn't do blinds up till recently. I learned all the 12 events very quickly. But then I realized that, yeah, I got up till a good amount of time in all the events. I am decent at all the events as per me. Like I don't do the events, the side events, so I don't care about it. But the events which I liked, starting, it was 5 by 5. Uh, in my first competition, my aim was 5 by 5 podium. I was fourth in the first round or fifth in the first round. That too in the Mumbai competition. That is a very high level competition there. In my first competition, it was a good achievement for me. Finals, I messed up a little bit. I had a complete solve mess up. But after that, I pushed myself more and realized that, yeah, now I can push myself because, see, I have a very simple theory. Two types of people exist. One who attend the competition, don't win anything, and are like completely demotivated and they don't compete again. They throw off the cube as soon as they leave the venue. Second, whom I like the most, like in the sense whom for whom cubing is meant to be. That who go to a competition, they participate, they didn't win anything, but now they are highly motivated. This happened to me recently. Like in the last 2 days, I conducted two sessions with two different new students. One participated in the cubing atmosphere competition in Hyderabad, and one came to the Aerocity competition. Both of them were first timers. And the first thing I told them that if you are having this session after the competition, that means that you are motivated. And the parents were like, yes, they are highly motivated. And that's the reason we started to look for a cubing class because before that they were doing it by their own. So this is something that people should understand. Just because you have a opinions in the community or you want to stay there doesn't mean that you will enjoy cubing forever. I know that I can push myself
Yeah,
further, but everyone cannot devote that much time because maybe because they have other commitments, studying, school, everything. That is something that we don't say avoid study and just cube because that does not therefore your define your future as of now at least. Cubing is not a full-fledged future for the mass. Correct. Few very limited tubers are earning well with speed cubing, but again, for that you need to be very world class. That the mass is not capable of. Correct. So that way, I feel that cubing as a hobby you can take, but if you're serious about it, it requires a lot of motivation from yourself and a lot of push. Like it's not like I believe that you would also get demotivated with cubing many times. Correct. Like since you have been cubing for 11, 12 years now, even I have cubed for like 3.5 years. Still in between, I get demotivated. Like for my recent competition, I have my goals. I was not able to go near to it. I got demotivated, but I pushed myself, and now I am a bit more satisfied. Similar things happen because that's a temporary demotivation. Yeah, temporary demotivation that you demotivate yourself just because you're not achieving that particular goal, but again you push up yourself and get onto that mark. So that is a good way of moving ahead. So yeah, I guess this was all it for this episode. So a huge thanks to Kunal Bhaiya for accepting our invite and being the first guest of the season three. And I am very sure that this would be a good beginning to this season, and we would end up with more Cubers sharing their stories. So Kunal Bhaiya, do you have anything specific about that you want to share with the audience about the podcast or in general about Cuban?
I would say just stick with it, and I hope to see some of you on the big stage at maybe the National Championship, Asian Championship, or World Championship. I hope to see some of you achieving really good results, and good luck to all of you for your cubing endeavors.
Yeah. So hopefully all of you enjoyed this episode. We will be shortly out with our next episode pretty soon. And yeah, we will have around 7 episodes as planned. Maybe it can differ according to what mess I make. But yeah, the plan is full. We will make 7 episodes, Kala for a reason, no doubt. And we will end 2024 with the last episode of HC Talks. So this is the first episode. Hitesh signing off with Kunal Oak. So yeah, bye.